Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. What a delight to have with us today Debbie Chaves. She's the Executive Director of the Colorado Family Action and the speaker at the Breaking the Silence Conference hosted by the Church for All Nations. We want to talk to her about this conference coming up because I think it's going to be pretty significant and certainly puts out a challenge. So, Debbie, hi. Good to see you.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Well, first of all, what is Breaking Silence Conference? What's it all about?
Well, actually, we just had the Breaking the Silence Conference. It just wrapped up last week, and it's about empowering people of faith to carry their values out into culture and out into public policy.
How's it going?
You know what? It was amazing. We had 1,200 people that showed up because they were passionate about what does it look like to be able to speak truth out there in culture. Right now, we have so much chaos going on, and people are hungry for truth, and they want to be bold enough to say that.
This certainly plays into the conflict that we have. Just how much should the church be speaking out on these issues? You probably have seen it too. Some pastors choose to stay silent. Some choose to be very vocal. Where do you think we are with that?
You know, unfortunately, we do have a lot of pastors that choose to stay silent. The Word of God is very clear. It lays out how to apply biblical principle to issues of the day. We see that throughout Scripture. You look at Nehemiah, and he went in there to rebuild the gates, the walls of the city, and it was completely broken down. But he had to make an assessment. He had to unite the people. They had to stand on God's Word and get to work and get the job done. Now, in that process, there were those that were just secular, cultural people that wanted to cause chaos, destruction, and they actually brought lies to the people to say, oh, this isn't going to work. We see that same model today. So it's true that nothing's new under the sun. So right now we need to do the same thing. We have an assessment of what's going on, what's true, what's false, what leads to life, what leads to destruction. And we can clearly identify that. But, you know, when you're grounded in God's Word, it's a little bit easier.
You were one of the speakers. What was your topic?
I actually was talking about resetting that moral compass. And a lot of times, especially with the marriage ruling that came down from the Supreme Court, we see people in distress and they say the model of the family is what builds a stable society. And it's true. And to have that model be destroyed through just one decision from unelected judges that decide, 5 of them, that decide for the entire nation that marriage between one man and one woman is no longer the valid model out there for family, that's dangerous. And we need people to speak truth to that from the pulpit.
Well, in California, they've taken the term husband and wife out of their rulings, and now they want to propagate that nationwide. Here's a clear example for the church to speak up, but will they?
You know, some will and some won't. The pastor that actually hosted the Breaking the Silence conference here, he is a bold man. He understands that the people need a shepherd. Pastors need a shepherd sometimes, just to stand up and say the truth from the pulpit. And I don't care if that church has 10 people or 20,000 people. What we need to do is build alliances pastor to pastor. Give them courage with each other so they will be willing to stand and talk about these issues of the day. We have Pastor Jack Hibbs out in California. I believe he's right in the middle of his Engage California conference right now. So he's doing the same thing in California that we did here in Colorado, just to unite the people, embolden them to understand that this truth that we're standing on benefits people, it benefits children, it brings a future to our nation.
First of all, before I ask you more questions, now, those who couldn't attend, they have DVDs available. What do they do if they want to see some of these speakers?
They do. You can go to breakingthesilenceconference.com. and you can actually order those DVDs there. And they're compiling all of the speakers that we had. We had some panel discussions that were phenomenal. We had some millennial panel discussions, that 18 to 34-year-old, just to see what are they noticing in culture, what are they passionate about, what do they feel can be done. I was blown away. Actually, I was changed by just leading those panels of millennials because they are so on fire and they're not afraid. They move at a fast pace. They love truth. They like to speak it. They love to invite people to be influenced by truth and not just receive information.
Debbie, since the conference now, we've seen the story break with Planned Parenthood and that incredible doctor sitting there in such a cavalier attitude, eating a salad or drinking red wine and talking about dismantling babies. To me, I'm still trying to figure out the words to describe my feelings, but wouldn't this be one of the key issues for the church to speak out on?
This is absolutely one of the key issues, and this is where people understand what boldness looks like when we are defending the defenseless. Because quite frankly, to sit there and try to use covert terms to describe how you're going to carefully position a baby so that you don't squish its organs so that you can harvest those organs. That's despicable. That type of thing definitely needs to be spoken, not just in the public square, but from the pulpit. And this is where we take that life issue out to people and say, folks, this is no different than a Holocaust. We need to understand that when you are harvesting somebody for sale, we are so against sex trafficking. How is this any different than sex trafficking? We are harvesting these organs for sale.
It seems, Debbie, that the culture has done somewhat a good job of taking all of our tenets of faith and our core belief systems and politicized them in an attempt to keep us away from speaking publicly about them. And now your conference is suggesting we take the ground back. Is that right?
Well, you know what? And I'll tell you what, Satan was pretty good at politicizing too. So right away he went to Eve and he said, did God really say that? Did he really say that you couldn't eat from any tree in the garden? And so all he has to do is just change a few little words to cause a little bit of confusion and then come back at you again and ask another question to get you to doubt. You know what, folks? Truth is truth. And I think that's where we understand that when we stand on truth, we don't need to question it. And people can put a spin on it, but it's still going to stand. And right now, I love that you brought up the thing that happened with Planned Parenthood, because seeing something like that, there's no denying that that woman was out there to harvest organs of babies and put them for sale. Now, I know that Planned Parenthood has put out something now saying, well, the money we were talking about was just to transport the organs for research. Well, I saw the video too. And I know many people out there saw that video. That was not for transportation. That was selling organs.
It seems that if you take the Planned Parenthood issue and the ISIS issues, we're dealing with evil. That's a spiritual. That's a spiritual evil. So you've got two physical outpourings of evil, and evil is spiritual. Do you think pastors understand this?
I think some do and some don't. I think some pastors, quite frankly, are afraid. They've heard about the Johnson Amendment. They don't really understand it. They don't know how it originated back in the 50s. They don't understand their religious freedoms. We have great organizations in our land that help explain those. Alliance Defending Freedom is one of those allied organizations that we work with. We do workshops for pastors so that they can understand what the freedom in the pulpit is. They host a Pulpit Freedom Sunday to help pastors get out there and tell the truth from the pulpit. They're just asking for one Sunday a year for them to unite on the same day. And quite frankly, these pastors that stand up, they'll even say, give us your sermons. We'll send them to the IRS. We'd like a lawsuit on this issue because we understand that this will not hold up in court. The freedom of speech from the pulpit has not been taken away. Now, can a church endorse a candidate? No, they can't. Can a church say how you should vote? No, they can't. But a pastor could say, I personally, as pastor so-and-so, have decided on my conscience and biblical convictions that this is who I personally am voting for. That's freedom, and that's freedom that's in the pulpit.
The whole subject of church, the faith community speaking out on these social issues is dividing the church. And so it's a sad thing to see happen, but there are a lot of folks who just care not to go down this road. They just think this is a worthless thing to do. I'm just going to preach the gospel. I get that. Then there are those who are speaking out it very loudly and very clearly. The culture is looking at us as being bigoted and unloving. We're in a real corner here.
You know, we are in a corner, and I think this is where you understand when truth and grace are balanced, you can tell the truth in a way that invites somebody to come and know it. We can't push truth on anybody, so standing on a street corner screaming at somebody, that's not an invitation to know truth. That's actually a condemnation. Now, we can look at behavior and know what's right and wrong, but we need to be able to invite someone to come to the truth. And that's why I like to talk to people about, are you carrying information to people and screaming information at them, or are you carrying influence to people? When you carry influence, you tell truth, but you also ask them, where are you at? What are the filters you use to decide what's true and what's not true? Because a lot of times, if we ask that simple question of someone, how do you know that to be true? Then they have to look at where they got their information and figure out if it's really true or not.
All right. Before we run out of time, what simple piece of advice would you give to a person who's now feeling compelled to defend their faith, to stand up for what the Bible really says about these issues, and yet that feeling is offset with, gee, I don't want to come across angry and mean and unloving. What would you say to that person to find the avenue by which they can express what they really believe?
Well, first off, there's so much to be passionate about. I like to tell people to look to an area that you have a specific time commitment or a passion individually. And because we can't take on everything at once, it would be impossible and we wouldn't do a good job. So you want to see where you have a passion. In that, what's the goal that you'd like to see come out of that area? And once you realize there is a goal to be had, what steps would it take to actually lead to that goal? And you know what? We need to make an honest assessment of what kind of time commitment are we able to put into this. Because we can go out there and make a difference if we stay involved. A lot of times we get so passionate, we run before we understand that we do have time commitments elsewhere, and we want to be realistic about what type of time we can devote to this specific issue. Then the best part is we have lots of organizations that are passionate about these same issues. Who's already working in that field? Identify those and hook up with them. See if there's a way you can plug in through their organization, and talk to your friends. Have your friends over for coffee. Meet with them in the public square. Talk to people on your lunch break about what you're passionate about. That's not pushing your views on anybody. That's just sharing who you are and what your life is.
Wow, well said. All right, people want to get a hold of you. They go to churchforallnations.com. And if they want to get the DVDs from the conference, what do they do?
They go to breakingthesilenceconference.com.
breakingthesilenceconference.com. All right. Hey, thanks, Debbie. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. You have a blessed day.
God bless you. All right, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Welcome back. Well, earlier we had a chance to talk to Dr. Jared Pingleton, the Director of Counseling Services for Focus on the Family, and deals with money issues, which I think sooner or later we all deal with. But his argument, most couples suggest practical money discussions and how that may contribute to their marriage. So let's join Dr. Jared Pingleton.
Well, today we're talking about marriage and money, and my guest is Dr. Jared Pingleton. He's the Director of Counseling Services at Focus on the Family. Welcome to the show. You say, Dr. Jared, that in your decades of counseling, you've never seen a married couple have a fight about money. I don't believe you. So you're going to have to tell me, how is that possible?
Sure. Well, that seems to be a popular belief that that's the number one cause, not just of marital disputes or fights, but even of divorce. But I've never seen a couple have a fight over money, because what is money? Money is merely a symbol. It's a commodity of exchange. And what money is really is pieces of paper or shiny metal with images or pictures of dead presidents or inventors on them. And it's what money is what couples argue and fight about and have disputes with are the meanings and the values that they attach to money. If you gave a dollar bill, for example, to an Aborigine, they might smell it, perhaps taste it, but then they would drop it on the desert floor as they wandered away, because why? It has no meaning or value to them.
So if a couple is already married, they never had those discussions about money and what meaning they ascribe to money, and then suddenly they realize, what do they do when in the midst of marriage they realize that they ascribe different values?
Sure. And I think you hit on the key there, Paulina. The issue is communication. It's not money, it's the meanings they put onto money. And so they must be able to communicate about their values, about their identity, their belief systems, what's important to them, what's meaningful to them. You know, we live in a culture that worships money. And the truth is, there's an old expression that says, money can buy you everything but happiness and take you everywhere but heaven. And that's true.
So how does the couple start that conversation? Is there a better time? Is there a certain technique that you would suggest?
Well, hopefully they start it when they're dating, but most couples don't. I think it's very important to look at the subcultural meanings that are embedded in perhaps their families of origins, values and meanings they ascribe to money. For example, some families are savers, some are spenders, and those are values that need to be discussed, because if you have a person who is a saver married to a person who is a spender, yeah, there's going to be friction. There's going to be misunderstanding and conflict. Why? It's not about money. It's about what they value and what they believe is important and what's important to them. And so those discussions, I think, are important to have anytime and frankly all the time.
So if you have a couple that comes to you for advice and he's a saver, she's a spender, give me some practical steps that they can do to live happily.
Sure. They have to come to a sense of balance and mutual understanding. The truth is there are benefits and blessings to both of those perspectives. The challenge is that what most couples try to do is change their spouse, right? They try to change them into their way of thinking, which of course is the right way of thinking. And the value of each perspective is what the couples are really advocating for. So I think what we have to do is look at, okay, what am I emotional about here? Why am I upset? What is this intensity about? And many people will feel that, it's really the fear of, for the saver, not having enough nest egg for a rainy day. For the spender, the fear is, I won't have enough possessions to make me feel good or happy about myself and fulfilled. So when they can get past that surface issue beyond what it's not really about money, it's about really their personality and what is important to them and who they are. That's when you can really find ways to connect at a deep and intimate level.
So at what point do you bring God into your finances? At what point does, say, a saver has to say, okay, God is in charge, I'm going to let my wife spend all this money and God will take care of us? Is there ever a point where you just kind of let things go and let God take care of them?
Great question. The truth is this: Jesus spoke more about money than he did heaven. The Bible talks a whole lot about money, and I wrote a book recently called Making Magnificent Marriages, and in a chapter called Money Matters, a little pun there intended, the Bible talks extensively about money, because the truth is money is probably the most humanly common god or idol that can have us instead of us having it. And so I think God knows very deeply and very implicitly that our temptation as human is not to have money, but for money to have us. And so that's why there's so much teaching, there is so much discussion, there are so many principles in the Bible to guide us about our money. And we, of course, in the even Christian subculture, have a lot of folks that really distort and pervert the meaning and essence of money. There are some who believe that, money is everything, and if God's not making you a zillionaire, then somehow you have sin in your life, or, something like that. But the truth is, God understands money as a resource, and he gives us resources to manage, but they're his resources. Everything we have and everything we are comes from God. Those are his gifts to us. What we do with those becomes our gifts to him.
So, is it okay to want more money then for a family?
Well, that's a great question. I think what we have to do, as with all things, is examine our motive. If our motive is to acquire more so that we can be better managers of those resources that God has blessed us with, then I think that's one thing. But if it's to get all we can and can all we get, so to speak, as the old expression says, then that's a selfish motive. And I think God understands our heart, and he will bless us accordingly. But money is something we should that we should handle with an open palm rather than a closed fist, because obviously, when we wear out ourselves trying to get rich, as Proverbs says to not do, that causes a lot of problems.
I know that a lot of families at some point, well, not a lot, some families have to deal with helping in-laws. You know, the wife wants to help her parents, the husband wants to help his. If that does not, if the wife and the husband can't agree on that, what's your advice there? How much of a help do you suggest they offer to in-laws?
Well, again, a great question. I think that, again, is governed by a biblical principle. Obviously, the scripture says that those who do not help their own family in a financial, contextualized way are worse than an unbeliever. But that's really talking about their own family, not their family of origin. And again, I think it's not the adult child's job to get their parents raised right. And yet, I think we also need to not be insensitive, uncaring, and unfeeling to the needs of our loved ones. But certainly, I think Scripture says very clearly our first responsibility is to our own family of choice. That is, the marriage and the children in the intact unit of the nuclear family. I think beyond that, extended family issues, I think those are discussions that need to be had between the husband and wife if there is an ability to help. Certainly, I think that is an important consideration. When there's an out-and-out power struggle and a deadlock, that's probably a good time for that couple to go get an objective third party's opinion to help mediate their dispute, and that's a good reason to go to counseling.
You mentioned children as a family of choice, as someone that should get help first. Is there an age where you stop helping kids? Because, I mean, I see that a lot, and I come from a different culture where the line is not as, it's not as if like 18 years old you're on your own. A lot of kids live with their parents, up till they get married, and it can be in mid-20s, and it's completely normal culturally. In this country, it seems like 18 years you're on your own. Is that biblical?
It's not biblical. There's no hard and fast rule. But I think to step back and look at the bigger picture is biblical, and that is the whole goal of healthy parenting is to work ourselves out of a job in the right way and in the right time. And yet, in that regard, every child is different. Some people are much more ready to assume adult responsibilities at certain ages than others. But I think the bigger picture here, and what I see a lot in our culture, is parents enabling adult children to stay dependent upon them. And that's not healthy for the child. So I think the important issue there is, what is best for the child? And I think that's the consideration Scripture would always point us to, is our motive needs to be altruistic. What's best for the other person?
You mentioned earlier that financial discussions between husband and wife, future husband and wife, should be during the dating period. I know personally several couples that postpone getting married until they get out of debt. I know some married couples that postpone having kids until they get out of debt. What's your take on that?
Debt consumes so many of the younger people in our culture, and particularly young marriages. It's much easier to get into debt than get out of debt. And so I think we need to be wise about how we manage the resources we have. But you raise an important point. The average college graduate now in America has about $25,000 to $30,000 of student loan debt. And that can be very handicapping. And I think what's very important is to resist the cultural influence of advertising that says, there's no need to pay now, you can pay later and later and later. And I think another related question to yours is, how does credit get managed? Credit is not a bad thing. It's how we use it. And credit can work either for us or against us. And I think what's very important is to be very upfront and open about our debt, and then open to discussions about, okay, how are we going to tackle this? How are we going to manage our debt? How are we going to work at being responsible for paying what we owe? And I think certainly it's respectable for folks to say, okay, I want to make sure I'm not consumed or controlled by debt, particularly consumer debt. And to those folks, I think that's a very healthy decision to say, hey, I'm going to postpone or delay certain things in life till we're not controlled and consumed by debt. At the same time, many couples that really want to have it all now don't learn delayed gratification. And for those people, I would recommend plastic surgery, that they cut their credit cards in half and go on a cash basis so that they're able to be responsible for managing their debt. So yeah, it's a good question, and I think each couple needs to answer that themselves as to whether or not they get married, whether or not they have children, depending on their financial stability. Another point to consider, though, in that regard is most folks realize if they wait till they can afford to have children, they may never, because children cost a lot of money. And I think the challenge is how can we adjust our lifestyle, make other decisions to be responsible fiscally.
I know, Dr. Jarrett, you have a lot of resources available on Focus on the Family website. What's the website address? FocusOnTheFamily.com and 800-A-FAMILY are the best ways to access our information and contact us. Perfect. Dr. Jarrett Pingleton with us today, Director of Counseling Services at FocusToday. At Focus on the Family. FocusToday is us. Thank you so much, Dr. Jarrett, for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having us as a guest.
All right, great stuff from Focus on the Family. Hey, coming up next, what is the right answer to a tough question? We're going to talk about that with Steve and Polina in just a moment.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
All right, welcome back, and delighted to have with us Steve Johnson and Polina Leiser, and we're going to do a little panel discussion on something that popped up over the weekend. And what provoked me to go down this road was presidential candidate Scott Walker, former governor of Wisconsin, or current governor of Wisconsin. He was asked some tough questions, and the biggest question that came out was, is being gay a choice? And I thought, well, this is interesting because that is a direct question that leads to all kinds of things. But stepping back from that just for a moment, every one of these candidates are going to go into a pool now where all of these social questions are going to come at them about as blunt as that. Mm-hmm. And what are we to think as people who are sitting over here as potential voters for their candidacy to think if in fact they don't have a direct answer, that they're already running from the press of trying to pre-identify them going into an election cycle. Now, one of the reasons I think that Trump probably is doing so well is he doesn't give a rip about what anybody thinks. He's expressing himself, and in that expression, he's actually saying some things that a lot of people are thinking. Now, will that anger and that frustration and that flamboyancy win him the nomination? Yet to be seen. Some thinks that he'll probably self-destruct and maybe so over his issue with McCain. But back to Scott Walker for a moment, I thought two things. We're going to play the video here in just a moment. Two things you'll see in this video. One is it appears to me that he wasn't properly prepared for this question.
That's kind of surprising, isn't it?
So wouldn't that be an organizational thing? That would be his advisors around him haven't prepared him for this particular question. Number one. Number two is he was really struggling with answering the question. And I can't help but think if I was put on that spot, I would struggle with it too. Wouldn't you? I mean, you have your personal convictions, and yet you want to be politically acceptable. What would you do?
Personally, I don't think that's as difficult a question to answer, but when you have it charged like you know that it is, to decide whether or not you're going to be seen as a hater or an embracing of a lifestyle, I think there are ways that these can be answered without too much difficulty. I mean, for example, the question asked to him was what again?
Do you believe being gay is a choice?
I don't know why a politician can't come out and say, well, we make a lot of choices in life. A heterosexual couple or an individual is going to decide who it is that he is going to have sex with. So does a gay person. So we make all sorts of choices throughout the day, and I think it obviously is a choice that is made on whatever side of the field you're on. See, my point is we kind of I think get sucked into that, and now we think, oh, I have to choice my words so carefully. I have to choose them so that I don't come across as a hater, and then it sounds stupid because they're waffling like crazy. But I think if you were to say, yeah, you know what, everybody makes choices every day. It doesn't matter what sex you are or who you think you might be attracted to, you're going to be making a choice.
Okay.
You know? So, I'm not sure why, to me, I suppose that leads to another question then. Well, do you approve of the gay lifestyle? That could be the next one that comes out. But I think initially, when we get so fearful of the question that we become frozen, then we look like the person with a deer in the headlights, like you were saying, it appears Scott Walker did.
Yeah. Your thoughts before I play the video?
Oh, my thought is that, first of all, I don't like the question. When people are asked, is it a choice or is it genetic? To me, if I was a gay person and somebody told me you chose that lifestyle, I would think, okay, if everybody says it's a sin, because I don't think a gay person sits down at some point in life and goes, do I want to be gay? Do I want to be heterosexual? I think it comes, like any sin, it kind of comes gradually into your life and creeps in, and then so it's not genetic, but yet I have a hard time saying that every gay person out there made a conscious decision to do that. I think it's a choice to get out of that, and I think you can get out of that lifestyle, and I think it's a sin to live that lifestyle. Okay. But I'm just personally having a hard time telling somebody you did it on purpose, and it's,
well, you know what you've done right there, though, is you've already moved it into another level of it being a sin, which now will be that next discussion, because you're posing it as a person who's running for office, and what would the response be? Because very seldom in conversations do people say, I'm having a steak and having dinner. Polina, do you think gay lifestyle is a choice or not? That's not normally the kind of discussions you have that way. But in a setting like you're talking about with Scott Walker and reporters, they're listening to hear, is he a homophobe? Is he embracing of it? Whatever it might be. And so you've already jumped into it being a sin, though. So you can imagine now it's moved on into a whole nother level of discussion.
But you said something, Polina, that was good.
Oh, finally.
No, you have a choice to get out.
Yeah.
So therefore, you had a choice to get in.
See, then
now you could have made that choice unconsciously.
But that's what I'm saying.
But you did make that choice to get in it.
Of course, a reporter would say, "So this is a decision that people should get out of," from what you said, right?
Yep.
See. So it kind of comes back to that to begin with.
Let me play this video because this sets up. Here's the issue. All of these issues, because I have some other questions to ask, and you can be pondering these while we're watching this video. Is abortion killing a baby? Is ISIS evil and should be extinguished? Are you against gay marriages? That's where we are. Let's take a look at this video.
Earlier this week, you said that the Boy Scouts of America should keep its ban on gay leaders because the policy protected children and advanced Scout values, and then your campaign clarified to say that it was really protecting the Scouts from the political and media discussion about that. I'm having trouble understanding that. What at the end of the day, what is your position?
I'm not talking about personal protection. I'm talking about, for me, the reason why I didn't have a problem with it is I just think it pulls scouting into a whole larger political and cultural debate, as opposed to just saying scouting is about camping and citizenship and merit badges and service awards, instead of pulling all these other issues out there. And I would just hope that they could stay focused. That's all.
So, but should there be a ban on allowing gay men to be Scout leaders?
That's up to the people who run the Boy Scouts. One thing that people find unique, I guess, whether you like it or not, is I actually answer questions. People ask me a question, I'll answer a question.
But you're not really answering this one.
Sure, I said in this case, that's what I thought. I thought the policy was just fine.
Okay.
I'm saying when I was in Scouts, it was fine. But you're asking what should the policy be going forward? It should be left up to the leaders of the Scouts.
Do you think that being gay is a choice?
Oh, I mean, I think that's not even an issue for me to be involved in. The bottom line is I'm going to stand up and work hard for every American, regardless of who they are, no matter where they come from, no matter what their background. I'm going to fight for people, and no matter whether they vote for me or not.
To act on behalf of people is to do that properly. You have to understand, or at least have an opinion on who they are and where they're coming from.
But again, I think in the end you don't. No, I don't have an opinion on every single issue out there. I mean, to me, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. So I'm saying that from an opinion standpoint, I don't know what the answer to that is. And again, I'm going to spend my time focused on things that I do know and what I can work on.
Wow.
You know, I wonder though if he hasn't made a conscious effort not to have a stance on that. I'm thinking that might be the case. I'm not sure if that. I got the idea watching him that to him this isn't that big of a deal, although it is to a lot of Americans. So it could be, and he's saying, well, it's not on my radar. I'm really not interested in that aspect of it. You know, and I guess that's a fair answer that he could have, but I'm sure a lot of people on both sides of the fence there will want to know more.
All right. Could he have done himself better by saying, look, I'm not going to answer any of these questions about the gay community or homosexuality, so move on?
You know, you do that and you come across as hard-nosed. I think they're saying, you know, these are the questions of the day and you need to answer them. I think if he were to do that and be kind of dismissive of
but
it.
But his answer was, I don't have an opinion on all these issues. Well, of course he does. He just doesn't want to say what it is.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
It does bother me a little bit if he doesn't have an opinion on it, because everybody seems to, you know. So was that evasive? That could be a problem. But I guess let the chips lie where they may and say what you want. I'm a little surprised because he has become very forthright on some other issues. But you're right, he is holding back a little on these.
Because here's the problem, excuse me, Polina, and that is that he can select his answers to a select audience. Now, if he's going to go before the NRB, he's going to answer all the questions that the NRB wants to hear. And he did that. I'm for traditional marriages, and it kind of came down the list. Okay, but in a setting like that, he's avoiding them. Mm-hmm. So I guess, look, this scenario is the scenario for all Christians. You're being asked the same question at the water cooler today in your office.
It could be, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So what's the answer? What's your thought before I take a break?
I was going to say that what bothered me more about this is the question and the way she asked it and the way she drills it. And that's so typical of the media to go that direction and kind of dig deeper. I mean, can you imagine asking Hillary, do you think gays is a choice or genetic? And say she would say it's a choice. And you say, well, so you're saying all the Christians out there are bigots? Are you saying that Jesus Christ was a liar? You know, like if you were to go that way with the liberal and push your agenda, oh my goodness, you'd lose your job for being that kind of journalist. And yet people like this lady
all right, so as
are
part of
praised
the
for being
campaign
good.
today, I mean, you're dealing with two things. You're dealing with your friends asking you the same question, your colleagues in an office, okay, or you're dealing with the press who's trying to trap you. So could he have responded with, and I'm not against Scott Walker, so please don't misunderstand me. I'm just trying to role play this out. He could have put the press back in her spot and say, why are you doing this? Why are you, the press, so concerned about sexual issues? Why aren't we talking about the national debt? Why aren't we talking about ISIS? Why aren't we talking about the military? Why can't you throw this back in the press's face?
Well, you know, Ted Cruz tried to do that, and he's kind of come across a little like a hard nose. That's the only problem with it, because the context of that entire discussion is going to be brought back to only that response that he'll have, that 8-second response.
Yeah.
So it's a problem to, you know, I think in a roundtable discussion where a lot of things are being mentioned, that could be brought up. But what's going to be the news thing? You know, Scott Walker fights back against liberal press, quote unquote.
Is that a bad thing?
For those people who are saying, oh, he's being very protective of his thoughts and he's really not letting us know what he thinks, it could be.
But those people wouldn't vote for him anyway, so what does he have to do?
Well, the only thing is he's got, but is that how he wants to differentiate himself from the other 14 Republicans? Probably not that way. It's probably more of a positive way of how he responded, you know, in a way that was seen as acceptable rather than defensive or fighting back. So, you know, can you win in this situation, I think, is probably the big question.
I remember
and you may have a hard time doing that.
Let me do this and I'll take a break. I remember when I was running for Congress, and my opening statement, I said to the press, right out. I said, let's just settle the issue right now. I am pro-life, no argument, no discussion. And I never was asked about it again. Right up front, I just told them I'm pro-life. And it moved on. I didn't have to be drilled about what I thought about abortion.
Well, now you'd have to answer all of those questions that have now made it onto the forum, too. About Boy Scouts and gay marriage.
Well, there you go.
All
right, let me take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Okay, welcome back, and we're having a little bit of a panel discussion ourselves here today with Steve Johnson and Polina Leiser, and we're talking about tough questions to us as people of faith, and yet to candidates. And what are we to do as people of faith when a candidate is asked an issue that is clearly a biblical issue? Marriage, life. These kinds of things. And what are we looking for in a candidate, and how much will we give them as a way of a pass and trying to stay politically acceptable while at the same time not compromising what we want them to say? So let's just do a little role play, all right?
Okay, so we're running for office?
Yeah, you're Marco Rubio and you're Carly Fiorina, okay?
Fiorina.
Fiorina. How do you say your last name?
Fiorina.
Fiorina, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like Ferrari.
Okay.
But not quite.
All right.
Well, I know nothing about her.
Well, that's all right. You're just role playing.
Pretend.
This is all hypothetical.
You used to be the president of Hewlett Packard. Now you know.
Oh, well, in that case.
All right. And you're in a debate. Carly.
Yes.
Are you against gay marriages?
Yes.
You want to explain that?
I think marriage is between a man and a woman, biblically, and that's the way it's been in our country for forever. So I'm against legalizing gay marriage. I think gay couples should have rights that some married couples have, but I don't think we should redefine the word marriage and extend it and expand it to other unions.
Okay. Marco, good to see you. How you doing? How's campaign going?
Good to see you too,
yeah.
Fred Lutz, Frank Lutz.
So, are you against gay marriages?
Well, I'd have to say this. First of all, I'm a Christian, and I believe the tenets of what I find in the Bible, and God established marriage between a man and a woman, and I agree with those tenets. I think that outside of that, I would have a problem with supporting that belief system because of what I find in the Bible.
All right, but now that it's legalized, what do we do?
Well, it is the law of the land, and those laws can be overturned if Congress feels the need to do that. I might. I'd have to look at how it's written specifically to see, because I don't want anyone personally to be have their constitutional rights impacted by it all. But I'd have to say that I certainly am in favor of the unity between a man and a woman, so I would look at that legislation closely.
You're such a politician, Marco.
Well, no, but you know.
So Carly,
yes.
Should same-sex couple have the rights of married couples?
Depends on what rights you're talking about.
All rights as a married couple. In other words, if we're not going to recognize their union as marriage, which even though the Supreme Court has, if we overturn this bill, this law, do they have the right to join their estates? Do they have the right to have benefits from one job to the other, from one partner to the other? Do they have the right to visit them in the hospital, et cetera, et cetera?
Well,
I mean, better known as civil unions?
Yes. I think the government should stay out of the bedroom. So on that regard, I don't know how much, personally, I don't know how much power the government should have in deciding those matters. But Personally, I wouldn't, if the person makes a conscious decision to live that lifestyle and they're committed to each other for the rest of their lives, and even though I personally consider it a sin, and I say it out loud,
Yeah.
I think that would be okay if they want to share insurance or visit each other in the hospital and do whatever else they do.
Marco.
Yes, sir, Fred.
Is
Frank.
ISIS evil?
I would say that by looking at a group or individuals as to how they react, you can judge. The Bible even says, by their fruits you will know them. I'd have to say everything I've seen in ISIS would indicate that, yes, they are not good people at all, and what they have done by killing innocent people is evil by anyone's standards.
If you were president, what would you do about ISIS?
I would certainly have a plan that our current president doesn't seem to have. And I think you would have to get together with military. Once you realize this is a group of people who need to be stopped from their current actions, then you have to come up with a strategy to do it. And I would bring in all the my chiefs of staff to tell me what they think their ideas are on how we could best fight this.
Carly.
Wow.
Yes.
There you go.
Is abortion killing a baby?
Yes, sure is.
What would you do as president?
Outlaw abortion
How?
by getting people together that are responsible for making laws and bills and putting, obviously you can't just do it with an executive order. I'm not going to be like the current president, but I think.
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, why not? But through executive order would you defund Planned Parenthood? Why wouldn't you do that?
Okay, well, you gave me just a great idea to defund Planned Parenthood. But this will not...
That's it. You can make up your strategy as you go along. It's not a problem.
Good idea. Do you want to be on part of my cabinet? But this will not solve the whole issue. Yeah, we can defund Planned Parenthood. The abortions will still be going on, and there are other clinics that offer that. So while I can go ahead and use my executive order, I think there should be a law that will outline abortion. Yes, I'll do everything I can.
Marco.
And as far as ISIS goes, Marco,
Yes.
I think we should just
Carly.
nuke them.
Wow.
Okay.
There you go.
Just get rid of them.
Marco, what would you do about abortion?
Okay, this if I were running for president like Marco,
Yeah.
what I think you have to do is set the stage, and I don't think a lot of people they'll shoot from the hip that way.
Yeah.
Here's one thing that I haven't heard mentioned, and I think it really has to be brought up. If I were Marco Rubio or whoever mentioning,
These are all hypothetical
names, yeah.
Okay.
Marco Rubio does not necessarily mean the Marco Rubio who's running for president right now. It's a hypothetical Marco
Here we
Rubio.
are.
who's
Just
also-
answer the question.
We're already
Here's what
covering
I'd have
our
to
rear
say.
ends here. We haven't done anything yet.
As the chief of state, I'd have to say that it's important for me to be able to defend the weakest in our society. And certainly those who are unborn are in the weakest position possible. And I think it's incumbent on the civil rights nature and history of the United States to support those who are the weakest. And certainly those people who are unborn, but soon to be, need to be protected at all costs, because right now their voice no one is speaking on behalf of them in such a way that protects them in the womb, and I think we need to start doing that now. So that's what I'd say, is I would just go back further to say this is a human rights issue, and all the civil rights people really need to get behind this, because whereas you have other people who at least have a voice and can speak out and you come to their aid, is the civil rights community coming to the unborn? No, they aren't. This should have been from the 60s, what the civil rights community should have backed up, saying, these are the weakest people in our society and we have to support them.
Carly, we only got about a minute left, but as an adult, you have the choice at your death to donate an organ. You can do that if you choose to further someone else's life. What right did these unborn children have to have their organs donated before they were born?
That's just disgusting. I mean, I think that this whole issue with the donating baby parts is disgusting and shouldn't happen.
And I, as Marco Rubio, would say that's a perfect example right there about how their rights are not being defended, because they have nothing to say about it, and they're actually being killed in the womb to have their organs harvested. If this isn't the biggest breach since we've seen of any travesty in the world, I don't know what would be.
Quick, I think I want to withdraw my candidate.
your candidacy.
And I'll have Carly be my vice presidential candidate.
I think I'm leaving this race. I don't like talking about these issues as a politician.
Listen, here's something we did here. You see, it's tough to answer these questions publicly, even as a person is conviction, because you're under the fear of saying something that would tank your candidacy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have a moral obligation to stand up for what you believe. It's a whole lot harder than you think it is.
Because you know it's not going to be just that one question.
Right.
There will be follow-up questions to that question.
There we go. Well, there is our panel discussion for the day. You can send Steve an email and Polina an email, and me if you want. And we'll
vote Marco.
Yeah.
Or Carly.
Or Carly.
Trump.
Or me. We'll see you next time.
Go John McCain.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.